Moving forward, Darius Slayton, 51% rostered, so only about half of leagues he'll be there for you. He's been really, really solid for the last 6 weeks, though. 29 targets since week 5 for the Giants, leading the team by a good stretch there. 21.4% targets per route. That's not elite, but it certainly is something that can get you the job done, and especially when what is your competition at this point? Odell Robinson looking electric this last weekend. 13 targets, zigging and zagging all over the field, looking great. Ultimately, that's not going to be an issue because he's now torn ACL, and I'm not sitting here like excited for that. I was really excited to see Wan'Dale continue to build on his success and get out there more and more. But now that he's removed, who else does he have to contend with? The ghost of Kenny Golladay, David Sills, Marcus Johnson? Like, that's what we're dealing with here. There should be no one in his way to seeing yet again 10-plus targets. We saw it this last week, caught 5 of them, Darius Slayton, for 86 yards. Ho-hum, another double-digit fantasy point day across his last 6. Half PPR points, 11, 2, 13, 9, 17, and 11. Just solid. No true blow-ups. I mean, that wide receiver 12 week last week against Houston looked real nice, but just solid, steady. I think you can depend on that the rest of the year. So I really like this guy, Darius Slayton. If he's out there in your league, could be very viable. If you miss out on Darius Slayton, Donovan Peoples-Jones, I say him every single week, Wolfpack. He is still out there. 5 of 6 targets, 61 yards, and a score. His first touchdown of the year. He has been rock solid even without the touchdowns, though, with 50-plus yards in 7 straight weeks, 70-plus yards in 5 of 7 weeks, and 10-plus fantasy points in 5 of 7 weeks in half PPR and full PPR. You bump that up to all but 1 week, and he never got lower than 9. So a nice floor. It's the same argument. You've heard me say it before if you're regular to this show. We've got a nice floor, solid outputs here, top 35 wide receiver in most of his weeks, wide receiver 14 this last week. And then you got Deshaun Watson coming back, a great deep ball passer who should only continue to up his ceiling there. So big fan there of DPJ moving forward. They also have a top 5 schedule for your fantasy football playoffs there. So really like DPJ down your stretch runs. Parris Campbell, another guy to feel really, really good about here down your stretch runs. 40% rostered. I would say all these receivers, Slayton, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Parris Campbell, bid 20 to 25% minimum. And if you're wide receiver needy, any of these guys are justifiable at the 30% or more range, given we're towards the end of the season here. Definitely could see them going crazy down the stretch, especially Parris Campbell. In his last 4 games with Matt Ryan, he's averaging 18.5 fantasy points. That would be the wide receiver 8 on the season. 11 targets, 12 targets, 9 targets, 6 targets. He loves throwing to the slot right now. A great spot for him. 15, 18, 17, and 9 points in those games I just referenced with Matt Ryan. He has been a top 12, a wide receiver 1 in 3 of those 4 weeks. The guy's been a beast, Parris Campbell. And yes, I get it. Jeff Saturday trying to establish the run. I don't think it will be quite as many pass attempts as we were getting used to with Frank Wright and Matt Ryan, but it's good to have Ryan back under center. It reinflates Parris Campbell's value. So anyone who dropped him while they were nervous about the Stan Ellinger experience, rightfully so, that was just a disaster. Now that we got Ryan back, I think Parris Campbell is a very, very solid wide receiver 3 down your stretch runs. And if you're looking for one more very viable, very usable wide receiver at this point, Demarcus Robinson. I wouldn't be shocked. Now, this one's a little riskier than the other ones. We got a nice track record with Slayton, with DPJ, with Parris Campbell. But, man, I really like this Demarcus Robinson kid. It wouldn't be shocked at all. He's got maybe a higher ceiling than any of them because he could truly emerge as the alpha for Lamar Jackson here down the stretch. Only 4% rostered. So, of all the guys I just talked about, Demarcus Robinson is likely out there in your league. 9 targets, hauls them all in for 128 yards against the Panthers this past week. The number 1 in targets, number 1 in receptions, the number 1 in receiving yards, despite getting Mark Andrews back into the lineup. Moreover, Devin Duvernay, the presumed guy that was going to take over and be this alpha down the stretch, just 2 targets across his last 2 games. Lamar Jackson also raving about Demarcus Robinson before this game, saying he's playing lights out. We've known what he's capable of. We just have to keep feeding him the ball and feed him. Lamar Jackson did just target after target, and all Robinson did was come through with his guy. And this is actually not all this completely out of nowhere. 23.5, 19.1, and then 28% target share across these last 3 weeks for Demarcus Robinson. Obviously, we know the explosiveness that this offense can have, and the schedule is beautiful for them. Jacksonville, Denver, the only bad matchup on the schedule here. Then Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Atlanta, and Pittsburgh again. All 4 of those last matchups to close out the year are top 5 for wide receiver, including Atlanta and Pittsburgh, week 16 and 17, the best possible 2 matchups. Not saying this guy's a guaranteed Demarcus Robinson, but let's say he catches fire, becomes the number 1 wide receiver for Lamar Jackson, and then you got him cruising into your fantasy playoffs with those 2 matchups. Oh boy, he could be truly a season winner. But if you don't need a starting wide receiver, those are the 4 most usable guys at the wide receiver position. But let's say you're set and you just want upside. You've heard me talk about him before, but I would prioritize Odell Beckham Jr. over all of those guys. If you don't need a starter, you just want to put somebody with some real upside, the biggest ceiling of any of these guys. It's not really close just because of how athletic and how much of a freak Odell Beckham is. He's 44% rostered, but I would put at least a quarter of my FAAB down to go get him, given that he's expected to sign at some point this week. He said after Thanksgiving at some point. I think it's going to happen on Thanksgiving, and I think it's going to be to the Cowboys. Make a big spectacle. Who would ever think OBJ would make this huge spectacle of it? What better day than with the Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day? And what a perfect landing spot. The offense is finally starting to cook, finally starting to look like the offense of old with 49, 28, and 40 points in their last 3 games. And Gallup just doesn't look like he's back to health. And that's the risk with Odell. Maybe he's not. This is a second ACL tear. There's no guarantee with what he's going to look like. But, man, he definitely has that kind of freakish ability to just keep overcoming these injuries. Last year, when he got traded to the Rams, had a touchdown in all but 1 game, was a top 24 receiver in 70% of those weeks, and then even took off further down the playoffs for this team. So, man, he could be a huge addition, stretch run for both the Cowboys or whatever team he goes to, and also your fantasy squads as well. Check out Odell Beckham if you want some upside. The other big rumor is the Giants reuniting with his old stomping grounds there with no more Wan'Dale there. I mean, Odell, when he's out, he's a souped-up Wan'Dale Robinson. Could he be that move around peppering those layup Cooper Kupp-style targets? Absolutely. So whether it's the number 2 with the Cowboys, the number 1 with the Giants, maybe even somewhere else rumored with the Bills or Chiefs, obviously those offenses dripping sex appeal too. Odell has some serious. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.